So today's gospel is a very interesting gospel. I love it because it is puzzling. This man Jairus comes to Christ and asks him to go and heal his daughter who was 12 years old. And he doesn't say that she is sick. He says she is dying. Just for a second, God protect and forbid. Imagine yourself going to Christ for something like that. And what is amazing, what's puzzling to me, is that Christ is taking his time. There's a crowd around him, and he's not rushing to run. When you call 911 and say, my son or my daughter is sick, all the cars move out so that the ambulance can get there as soon as possible, just in case that person is dying. In this case, everybody hears, and Christ knows that this little girl is dying, and he takes his time, and a crowd, instead of opening the way, surrounds him and crowds against him and presses against him, like the apostle says. And even more, someone else comes and touches him and takes the energy of healing off of him and grabs the healing without permission. Imagine again, the ambulance was going to Cambridge, to someone's house, going through Somerville, and you stop it and you say, yeah, I know you're going over there, but there's a sick person here. Why don't you take care of this one first? And Christ does not stop anyone who comes to him. He answers their questions. He gives freely the energy to the person who came to him. And then he goes to Jairus' house. Some of us who are politically charged, we say, well, this was a Pharisees or synagogue's person's daughter, so Christ was putting a difference. This was one of the people who was persecuting him. That's why he takes his time. No, we cannot judge that way, because Christ loves everyone equally. You may believe or not, he does love everyone equally. The sinners and the saints equally. He does not put asunder difference between any of you, any of the people in the world. But he had a reason why he wasn't rushing. There is no need to rush, because he is peace, because he is the salvation, because he is the doctor of souls and bodies. And it's very interesting when he comes that the daughter of Jairus had already died. Everybody was wailing because they did not have the faith that we do have today. They did not know about resurrection. They only knew that death comes and destroys. And they were wailing and crying over the young girl. It was indeed a cause for sadness. He walks in knowing that he is the resurrection and the life. And he says, those who come to me, although they die, they will live forever. So he comes with that conviction, with that strength of a creator, not of a creature. And he knows that people will not understand what he did. So he does not allow anyone to enter, but he goes in by himself with his other 3 disciples. Those were the disciples that went up to the mountain with him, in front of whom he transfigured and showed that he was God, not just human, but he was God who has become human. That he has authority and power over human sin, and the result of which people die. And that, if he wants, he can cleanse someone in a second. Like the thief on the cross. Lord, remember me when you come in your kingdom, he said from the cross. And Christ turned to him and said, because you repented, you will be in heaven today with me. He did not say, you repented, go through penance, do good works, please people. Then maybe I will let you get into the heaven. Because you had a deep sorrow, feeling your pain of your sins, because you were able to admit, because you were able to confess, you are cleansed. You can enter into the kingdom today. And so the Jairus' daughter was not a difficult thing for Jesus to raise, because this little girl did not even have sins. It's not that he said, your sins are forgiven, now resurrect. He simply took her hand and said, Talita kumi, which is in Hebrew, little girl, stand up. That's what resurrection means. Resurrection means to stand up. And now, the most important part of the words that I would like to say to you. In my Greek sermon, I said, the physical death is not a concern, because Christ will come and will hold from your hand when God give you a long life when you're dead, and he will resurrect you like he did to this daughter of Jairus. The dangerous kind of death is the spiritual death. When his disciples say to Christ, let me go and bury my relative, he says, let the dead bury their dead. How can a dead person bury a dead person? Well, those were two kinds of dead people. One that needed the burial was a physically dead person that we have every so often, even here now in the church. But there was the other kind of dead people who were dead spiritually, who did not know what life eternal is, who did not trust in God, who did not love their brothers and sisters, who had lost connection between them and God. The word amartia means that we have lost the connection, the link between us and God. And in the result, we die. But death does not begin when you are 95 years old. Death begins when you separate yourself from God. And that spiritual death eventually ends with our life. And hopefully, the solution that I said in my Greek sermon is the return to Christ. All we have to do is, like Martha and Mary, like Jairus, we have to come to Christ and say that I am dying, that I am bleeding like that woman that came and touched him. And all it takes is to touch the fringes of his clothes. All it takes is to lift up your eyes, is to rise, stand upright, and say and do the things that you would do and say if Christ was present. Say and do the things if you would do and say at the second coming of Christ. It's very easy. Simple formula. Come to Christ and live your lives as if he was always next to you. May the Lord bless you and strengthen you.